Hughes&Kettner tube amps, made in Germany for the world stage. Hughes&Kettner has been designing and building tube amps for nearly 25 years. Our goal since day one has always been to get the highest build quality and the highest sound quality. Just what you would expect from a German amp company, and we deliver every day.
Eines der wichtigsten Bauteile bei Hughes&Kettner ist die...
For Hughes&Kettner, tubes are the most important part of our amps, but also the most delicate component we use. The imprecise production tolerances within tube manufacturing are responsible for a huge variation in tube tone and tube reliability.
Und aus diesem Grund haben wir hier...
That is why we have developed the toughest and most sophisticated tube testing regime in this industry. The first part of this regime is the visual test. An experienced technician inspects the outside and inside of each tube for any obvious defects. Then we put each tube into the vacuum tube inspector, the VTI machine. The burn-in test. Each tube is heated and therefore cooked for 30 minutes on this machine over its full operating temperature. Up to 30% of all tubes fail this test and are rejected at this time. The next test is the high voltage test. We drive the heated tubes well above and beyond their normal plate voltage, right up to a peak of 3000 volts. The next test is the hammer test. This is our secret weapon. We simulate the on-stage conditions that your tubes get every gig. They shake, they rattle and they roll. And we do this for you as part of our test regime. The next test is tube matching. Only after all these other tests have been done, we then measure the characteristics of each and every tube at hot running conditions and classify them into one of 20 different categories. Only tubes from the same category will work perfectly in a single amp, which is why we do this test. The last test we do on the VTI machine is the vacuum test. We measure the grid current leakage and repeat this test to ensure that each tube is indeed a vacuum tube. Only tubes that pass this 30-minute tube torture test regime are then allowed to find their way into Hughes&Kettner amps. We treat all our other components with the same respect as we do the tubes to get the highest quality and the perfect Hughes&Kettner tone. Even more testing procedures are carried out at further stages of production. For example, each amplifier, before it makes its way into its wooden cabinet, has to undergo a 30-minute soak test, checking that all parts of the amp function correctly under full load conditions. Only after all these strict requirements have been made, the amp chassis is then given the OK to proceed to final assembly. Here again we rely on the work of human hands. Here in the final assembly stage, we visually inspect every amp. Since the various amplifiers are subject to a wide spectrum of different demands, the final assembly also requires the know-how of the professionals. Every single part of the amp, in fact every screw, has its purpose. Using a computer-driven test procedure, programmed specifically for each type of amp, all the amp's functions are checked out one more time. But there are no test operators on this earth that can replace human hearing as the final judge. And so, as the last step in the process, every single one of our tube amplifiers is played and listened to by a guitarist. It is evaluated by its tonal character in order to verify that it has the true sonic signature of a Hughes&Kettner amp. Only then is the amplifier approved and ready to ship, proudly wearing the stamp "Made in Germany."